Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, today I want to talk about the future great cleansing in the One Piece world. If you have not read up to chapter 907 of One Piece, I highly suggest that you do not watch this video. But if you have read that chapter, it should be pretty obvious what it is that I am talking about. Near the end of chapter 907, we can see the Gorosei say this: the balance of the world cannot be maintained forever. It seems like there is a need for a great cleansing. And then at the very end of the chapter, we see the Gorosei meet with a mysterious character who we have not been fully introduced to yet. That seems to be the ruler of the entire world government in secret, even above the Gorosei. And the Gorosei have this to say to them: the light that needs to be extinguished from history. Have you decided who it should be yet? If you have, please tell us their name. The obvious conclusion to derive from this is that soon enough plans will be set in motion in order to eliminate somebody. And I believe that this chapter also lets us in, gives us clues as to who this person could be, or who these people could be. It appears in this chapter the secret ruler Im-sama has been thinking about potentially who to kill, and has narrowed down the list to 4 candidates as far as we are aware, and had their bounty posters in order to decide. These 4 characters are Luffy, Blackbeard, Shirahoshi, and strangely enough, Vivi. It is suggested that by killing one of these 4 characters, or a few of these 4 characters, will help bring about a new balance that is currently lacking. But I first want to make an interesting point, guys. The world government could theoretically aim to kill them all, and they really shouldn't have any issue with doing that if they are already suspects or guilty in some way already. You have Blackbeard and you have Luffy, who are pirates. As pirates, you would think that it would be a priority to take them out already. You also have Shirahoshi and Vivi. Why they would even attempt to or label Shirahoshi as a threat is beyond me, unless they absolutely already know that Shirahoshi is the ancient weapon Poseidon. If there's any other reason, I could not fathom it at this moment. So being an ancient weapon, again, that's just another really obvious character. You shouldn't just kill one of them, you should kill all of them. Clearly, there should be no decision to be made there. And we'll talk a little bit later about Vivi. But despite what should be a very obvious and straightforward decision, it was a decision. They're not taking these killings lightly. They're being very careful. Im-sama seems to have been, at least in part, thinking about it deeply. And that's interesting to me. What it suggests to me is that they do not plan on targeting them or prioritizing them all at the same time, because there might be certain dangers and implications to taking out any single one of them. That is to say that I think that only one of these characters will be the target. So let's provide a rationalization for this. Perhaps some of you don't understand why this might be the case. And we'll start off with Blackbeard. Why don't they just go out of their way to attack and destroy and defeat and set all their forces against Blackbeard? And the reason is because Blackbeard is a Yonko with an incredibly powerful crew. Aside from being very powerful himself, many subordinates and territories in which he protects. I'm using that word lightly, but he rules over to some degree. If you declare war on Blackbeard, that is a huge war to declare, and it should not be taken lightly. I'm taken back to the rationalization behind capturing and executing Ace, all the way back before the time skip. The world government was very aware of what could potentially happen if they did that, but they thought about it first and decided it was worth it. It was worth taking out Ace, the biological son of Goldie Roger, even if it might provoke the strongest man in the world, Whitebeard. My guess is if they have decided that Blackbeard is not the target, then they are not quite ready for that war with the Blackbeard pirates. Essentially, if Blackbeard is not the target, what we have learned here is an acknowledgement of how dangerous a threat he poses to the world and the world government. But they aren't being careless about that threat, and about the power that he holds. We can also rationalize why they wouldn't go after Luffy. Luffy, very similar to Blackbeard and Ace, has a ton of connections. He has made friends with not only member nations of the world government itself, but many other pirates. It's no longer so easy to execute Luffy as it once might have been. And I think on top of this, you can also rationalize that it's quite possible that Luffy ends up getting killed by a fellow pirate and it's taken completely out of your hands, and you don't have to deal with any immediate threat to any of your forces or any of your established bases. There's absolutely no risk to the world government if Luffy is taken out by a fellow pirate. Kaido or Big Mom could be taking out Luffy. In fact, I think that's what the expectation of the world government might be as of now. And that also might be what they have specifically planned for. We talked about this in a video in the past, but I believe that the world government has actually laid plans and specifically manipulated the news in order to put Luffy on the same tier as Yonko, even though he is not quite ready yet. So they don't need to get their hands dirty. That's why Luffy may not be the target. At least not yet. And so now let's talk about Shirahoshi. Again, we're assuming that the world government, in one way or another, however it happened, knows that Shirahoshi is the ancient weapon Poseidon. Being an ancient weapon right off the bat should assume that they would want to either capture or kill Shirahoshi. She is a danger. She is a huge threat. But why wouldn't she be the target, potentially? And the reason for that is there's really nothing that suggests that she's going to be a danger despite her abilities. The ancient weapons, they need somebody to, per se, use them in order to maximize their threat potential. And it should not be underestimated the connections Shirahoshi has. Being a merman or being a mermaid, the entire fishman population would go insane. They would declare war immediately if Shirahoshi was in any way put into any kind of danger. Plus, additionally, many member nations of the world government might look down on the world government for taking out a member of this tribe, of this race. Straight up, guys, it's risky and it's a bad look. You have to be very, very careful about attempting to assassinate Shirahoshi. So that may be why Shirahoshi is not the target right now. And so this leads us into Vivi. And the first question you should have is, why is Vivi among this group of people? I'm sure that there's going to be many people out there, many people within the community, who are going to speculate that Vivi is in some way special. Like, I can imagine a theory cropping up, Vivi is the ancient weapon Uranus. But Vivi, unless I'm missing something, has not displayed or even had any hint whatsoever of being special aside from being a princess. Vivi is just she's the awkward addition to this list. But we'll get to that in just a moment. But it's pretty obvious why they would be hesitant to kill her, right? Because she's a princess, relatively innocent and kind and well-liked. Vivi is the most obvious bad idea to in any way harm or danger of these four characters. And so guys, I hope that made sense, but this is why I think that none of these four characters were easy choices as far as the light that is supposedly going to be extinguished. Every single one of them needed to be thought out in depth in order to make the most prudent decision that would have the least amount of risks and the most profit, in order to maintain this balance or reestablish it. And so this goes back to what I was saying before. Because each one of these characters has connections and bonds, and it isn't necessarily a good idea to pick multiple fights at the same time, I do believe that Im-sama only chose one of them. And if we are assuming that he did choose one, it's pretty obvious who he chose. You have 3 bounty posters collected, left behind, cut up, and one taken with him to the top of the stairs where he sat on his throne. I personally believe that the decision, the light that's going to be extinguished, is Vivi. As counterintuitive as that might be. As baffling as it is in the moment for why Vivi is a part of the group in the first place. And if I'm completely honest with you, I think that the specific wording that Oda decided to choose in this last chapter highly implies that it is in fact Vivi who is the target, aside from her bounty poster being singled out, being special in some way. Remember the wording. The Gorosei said, the light that needs to be extinguished from history. I highly suggest that you guys go back and read the very end of the Alabasta arc when Vivi and the Straw Hat Pirates say their goodbyes. Vivi had a very moving speech that made me cry at the time, and honestly still makes me tear up today. But the specific wording that she chose is just it's a pointing gun, pointing straight at her head. She has this to say: "And in the midst of a dark storm, I came across a single small ship. The ship pressed me onwards from behind and said, 'Can't you see that light ahead?' And then later on she has this to say: 'Look, the light is right there. History may call this a myth, but to me, it's the truth.'" You absolutely cannot convince me that this is a coincidence. You have the Gorosei talking about a light needed to be extinguished from history, and all the way back 600, 700 chapters in the past, you have Vivi talking about a light, which in this case represents her dreams. The light being extinguished from history, but to her it's the truth. The parallels are striking. I really do think Vivi is the target. But the question is why? Why is she even a part of this group in the first place? How would extinguishing her light in any way benefit the world government? Well, let's first start off with the rationalization for how the world government could apprehend and legally assassinate or legally execute Vivi for the crimes that she has committed. I think it's easy to forget because Vivi is such a wonderful woman whose past is not clear to the world. But Vivi was a pirate for some time. She worked in Baroque works under Crocodile and then joined the Straw Hat Pirates for a time. And in fact, 700 chapters in the past, Oda explained to us specifically her crimes. We see Vivi talking to the Straw Hat Pirates as they are leaving there in proximity, and the Marines think to themselves, isn't it weird? The princess should be in Alabasta. Why is she talking to the Straw Hats? And then they have this to say: "Did you hear that just now? Does Princess have some connection with the Straw Hat Pirates? The Princess is a friend of the Pirates? It can't be. This is coming from the Marines, guys." And at the very end of chapter 216, Luffy tries to yell at Vivi, "Will always," and Nami silences him. You can't reply. The Marines are watching her right now. If they have proof that she has connections with us, she will be branded a criminal. Let's say our goodbyes in silence. If the world government has proof or any sort of information about Shirahoshi being Poseidon, plus anything else that they might know, I have no doubt that they heard from somewhere, they've tracked Vivi, they know exactly what Vivi was doing for however many years she was a pirate. Period. If they want to brand her as a criminal, they can. It's only a matter of managing all of her various connections and making sure you're making a prudent, wise decision that is actually beneficial in some way. I don't think to the Gorosei and Aim-sama and the world government, I don't think it's a question whether or not Vivi is guilty of crimes. I think the question is whether it's worth it to take her out. And with her picture being associated with other infamous people in the One Piece world, an Ancient Weapon, Blackbeard, and Luffy, I think that we should assume that for some reason or other, whether we understand it or not, whether we speculate it correctly or not, Vivi is a threat. Somebody whose death is beneficial, which is still a question. Why would you take out a princess with very mild pirate connections who is no longer a pirate at all? She is not physically strong. She is not overly influential. There is absolutely nothing that sticks out about Vivi. At least nothing specifically tied to her aside from her connection with these Straw Hat Pirates. But I do have a speculation. And it's not going to be anything crazy like Vivi is the ancient weapon Uranus. Is that possible? Certainly it's possible. Is there anything that suggests it? Not that I have found. I believe that the execution, the planned extinguishing of Vivi's light, has everything to do with maintaining control on the member nations of the world government. And even the nations who are not a part of the world government. I want you guys to keep this in mind. This is a very tumultuous time for the world government due to, in large part, the actions of the Revolutionary Army. And I think it's really poignant to bring up this storyline now as we see the Revolutionary Army attempting to attack MavisHdz. It seems as though during the course of time that the Revolutionary Army has been active, it seems as though it's suggested, right, that many countries might have left the world government, been liberated in some way. Maybe it was from the royalty that controlled him, but the royalty was tied with, specifically, the world government. So you lose the connection of those royalty, then they become, I guess, free once again. So the world government would have to re-establish those connections. So in my imagination, although I do not believe that it has been confirmed, in the last several years, the world government has gotten a little bit smaller. And I also think that this ties well with the current storyline about what might happen to the Chichibukai, the actions of previous Chichibukais being specifically given leeway and power by the world government, and having abused that power. It's a bad look for the world government. It might convince countries that the world government isn't an entity that they should be a part of. And even considering the Celestial Dragons are awful, and they do all sorts of horrendous things, and everybody, it seems, knows that they're not good people. All of these small things added up together can potentially lead to revolution. The world government is powerful, but they can't defeat the entire world. They need to manipulate information. They need to seize the reins back. I want to make this point, guys. This is very, very crucial. The world government cannot just go about destroying countries at a whim, because doing so would make them the enemy of the entire world. A country might have done something illegal. They might, in some way be a threat. But if you destroy them, then you're also destroying a little bit of yourself and your own power, because it is these countries, their people, and their support, which allows for you, as the world government, to be powerful. I'm sure there's some sort of old saying in many different cultures about the people being the power of the government. Their objective should not be to destroy every country that opposes them. Their objective should be to be very specific and as tactful as possible in order to minimize the damages that they take themselves by their own hands. You have to have a reason. You have to be very calculated evil. I believe that Vivi's death is being orchestrated in large part as a message to the rest of the world. It doesn't matter who you are, the best of you. If you associate with pirates, if you go against our rules, you are not safe from punishment. This could also apply to any country which receives aid from the Revolutionary Army, or any country who associates themselves with pirates. It certainly might make them think twice at the very least. And again, this adds up extremely well with the fact that I don't think that the world government, the Gorosei and Aim-sama, like the Nefertari family to begin with. They consider them to have been traitors. They know this for some reason. And it's going to be even worse when King Cobra brings up the poneglyphs in the actual reverie. But yeah, guys, that is my idea for right now. Obviously, I think a lot of people would prefer if there was something crazy, like Vivi had some sort of secret hidden power or some other incredible importance that we can't even imagine. I personally would like that as well. But based on what I've read, I just don't see it yet. And I do feel as though, right now, without any additional information, it does make some sense. But I'd be lying if I said that I didn't think that I'm probably wrong here, because I feel as though new information of some kind will present itself eventually. Maybe soon. But anyway, guys, that's pretty much all I wanted to say today. As always, I'm curious as to what you guys have to say about this, whether you agree with anything that I had to say, disagree. Just share your thoughts. Like the video if you liked the video, dislike the video if you disliked the video. Make sure to subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content. And as always, guys, have a wonderful day.